Here's a typical squall in the Pacific Ocean. Right now it's blowing about 25 true, and a little more than that apparent wind. We have this dark line of clouds ahead of us there, and you can see rain coming down on that side over there. Winds blowing towards the east in the southern Pacific, because there's a storm south of us that's drawing the weather this way. So right now we're double reefed, main and jib. The bet is that we can clear that cloud right there and get in over the top of this thing. Okay, here's a mid-ocean tour of the X-Yacht XC45. We're about 500 miles south of Hawaii, entering the stronger trades. Anyway, a little trip around the cockpit. You can see that we have all these little orange screw keepers here. We don't want any of the screws backing out on us. Got them all over the bimini. You can see that one right there. That one has duct tape, because that one has come out twice or maybe 3 times. We've lost the screw once, so we got duct tape around there to make sure that it stays put and stays together. We had a backstay come loose on us, so we retightened that and put some tape on the nuts, and then some tape on the threads to monitor whether it's loosening up or not. We have the engine firmly mounted on the rail. The dink was immobile, totally immobilized. Now there's about a movement of about 1 inch or 2 in the dink. We'll have to tighten that up. Okay, you want to keep that totally immobilized. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, we have a German sheeting system that we blocked off, so we only have 1 sheet working. And that sheet is measured out to the max degree the boom can swing without hitting the shrouds. We have our hand sanitizer here. Right now we're in chart plotter mode, AIS alarm, wind vane mode, like I said, and that's all for that. Also, right here is kind of an annoying thing. All these boats that have tunnels, for lines, sub-deck tunnels, you're going to get little rivers going through there, and there's nothing we can do to block it off. The entrance of the tunnel is over there at the mast. So all the water that comes down the mast, all the water that splashes up and lands around the mast, is going to go in this like a 2 square foot hole, and that water is going to come down the leeward side of the boat, come out of the tunnel here, and work its way over here to the side. You can see it. And it's going to just stream right down, and it finds its way right into the corner here. Right there. And it comes out of the floor, right there. Okay, these are the refrigeration units. One is a air-cooled. This is for the front-loading refrigerator, air-cooled. And this one here is the water-cooled for the freezer. It's a big freezer. But these have some inherent issues on this boat. One, they put both of these guys together, so they're heating up each other. And we're in this box here that is poorly ventilated. You see vents there, but they only go to the other compartments that don't vent out. So we're having to keep these compartments open, to the fresh air, so they can at least cool off a little bit. It's not enough. The problem with the water-cooled one is that we have this. We had a problem here with the electrolysis on the saltwater temp, so that the electrolysis burned through the copper probe and ruined the temp probe. So we had to pull that out and epoxy it, so because it was leaking. It was leaking about 1 gallon an hour out of the wire hole there. And then the zinc over here is bad too. So the zinc, which should have been replaced, helps prevent the probe from being eaten alive. The water pump here is pretty silent, but it's lost its prime a number of times. And the problem with a water-cooled refrigeration unit is you can't tell when it's actually pumping out. All right, so this is the intake line over here on that side, right there, and the outflow is right here on that side of the pump. And we can't see the hole on the outside of the boat. It's below the water line. To prime it, depending on access here, I can either do one side or the other. Best side to do is on the output side of the pump. That way it pushes all the air out and reprimes itself. That's all we can do. Very, very hot. Temperature is about 160. It was about 180 before. And on this air-cooled one, the compressor is reading about 145. They're going to be warm, and if you can keep your hand on it without being pushed away, it's usually pretty good. If your hand gets pushed away from the compressor, then it's running too hot, and you're going to burn through the compressor eventually. So this little air vent here on this cooling system for this DC vent, just not enough. And the water cool here, bad idea for cruising boats going to the tropics. This is a Danish boat, right? So it's used to they're building boats for the Baltic. Pop-Tarts, the breakfast of sailing champions. I'm looking at a Furlerboom system. This is a fancy boom here from, I think, Denmark. And I found this on 2 X-Yachts. Both my clients have had some issues with them. So I'll tell you what I like and what I don't like. You can see ours is working loose here on the gooseneck pin. These are rather small fasteners, in my opinion, working loose. A lot of force is being applied right here to the gooseneck. This is a very heavy boom. It weighs over 300 pounds. I think this is fiberglass. They do come in carbon fiber. The mandrel inside, that's inside the mainsail there, is a carbon fiber. But still the thing is very, very heavy. And because it's so heavy, it has a lot of inertia. It swings around, it takes a big load on everything. So you really have to stabilize this boom. Here we have it stabilized with a preventer system off to the side over there. We have it swung out because trying to keep it from swinging overhead is more difficult. So off to the side we can use its weight as a little stabilizing force. For those boats that can afford a boom like this, they'll usually have German sheeting like this X-Yacht. The trouble with the German sheeting is that you can never know exactly where the boom placement is, because you have a 2-tail sheeting system, and then you have a traveler. Right? So with a German sheeting system, there's no way to tell from the cockpit how far the boom is to the rod rigging here. And which you don't want to have happen, of course, is this very heavy boom to swing out and bang into the rod rigging, which is why we have this little silver thing here just to mark the spot. If you look at it, it's a very long boom, very heavy. So if this thing swung out of control, like on an accidental jibe or someone letting go of the main sheet, then it can do a lot of damage. This thing will drive itself right into the rod rigging here, and you'll put a hole right in the boom. So if you have a boom like this, you got to make sure that it's protected from hitting the rigging, especially for those boats that have swept-back spreaders like this boat does. This boom, like a lot of booms,
has a bail. This one has a soft bail. So when the boom is extended, you see the bail there is slanted to one direction. And what that does is it redirects the main sheet. In this case, the main sheet is chafing right against the boom vang. So we had the opposite main sheet chafe. You can see that we tied off the German sheeting system, and we tied off one end of it right there where it chafed through. So in essence, excuse me, we're only using one tail of the German sheeting system. So the other side of it is just locked off. You can see over here on the deck, the tail just tied off right there. Some of these booms have hydraulic vangs because of the weight of the boom, which compounds the problem. This particular one does not have a hydraulic vang, spring-loaded vang, which does an okay job. Another client's boat has a hydraulic vang, and that one is works against the boom, or the boom works against it. So imagine if you had an hydraulic vang, and the vang had no give whatsoever. So when you compressed one end of the boom, like with the main sheet, that lever arm is going to work against the vang. It's going to pivot on the vang, and it's going to work up on the gooseneck over here. And same thing in reverse. If you haul up in the topping lift, it's going to pull against the vang and push down on the gooseneck. So you get this huge lever arm, very heavy, large lever arm, working back and forth like teeter-totter or like one of those oil derricks, and it's all working against the gooseneck. We've had both booms develop cracks along the forward edge of the boom there near the gooseneck. I think the way it's constructed, it's all fiberglass here, and then it goes into an end piece. That end piece is glassed in, and that end piece is taking all the load. Now, because the mainsail on this boat is high aspect and twisting works to great effect, we want to be able to twist or work the boom vang on this boat. So in order to do that, we travel all the way to windward to extend the main sheet, so then we can play the vang and therefore play the twist. However, the weight of the boom kind of works against that, and doesn't allow the boom vang to operate as it would a lighter boom. In other words, pushing up with a spring or pulling down with the purchase system. So we have to therefore use the topping lift back there to help augment the twist. So essentially, we move the traveler to windward, we blow the vang, and we set the twist with the topping lift. Or if it's just a minor thing, then we'll leave the topping lift slack, and then of course play the vang for whatever twist we can get. Now, topping lift here is pretty thin, small line. I think a topping lift should be a second halyard, so it should be of that size and strength. And in this case here, because of the enormous forces of the main sheet pulling down on the boom, the topping lift tends to stretch, and therefore it loses its mark, basically. So we always have to have our eyes on the furl to make sure the boom is at the correct height, so that the sail doesn't get bunched up here on the furl due to the topping lift being in the wrong spot. That means you have to have the main sheet loose and the vang blown, and then set the topping lift at the right height. And we do have it marked, but like I said, due to stretch, that mark changes. Now, inside of the forward end of the boom here is the big gear wheel, and you can see how thick that compartment is. It's about that thick. So there's a big gear wheel in here, and there's no locking mechanism, there's no redundancy, there's no access to it. So we have this furling line right here. It is an end-to-end butted furling line, one big loop, and we use that very cautiously in the cockpit to furl down the main and to set the reef in the main. So the problem there is that this gear wheel, which you can't see, obviously has large teeth on it and limited room. And when you have an end-for-end splice line like this, you can lose the splice like we just did. So that just parted today after about 7,000 or 8,000 miles, and that's not good. So we're going to have to be very, very careful about moving this piece around the gear wheel. Once it's around the gear wheel, then the cover should hold and then go through and back to the cockpit. So we're held hostage here by this one thing, right? So if we lose this line altogether, we would have to fish around the gear wheel. Mind you that the mainsail could be all the way up at this point, right? And the weather picking up and everything, so now we're in a big hurry to get the main down. So if that's the case, then we have to fish a line around this, and can't use that anymore because it's all busted. Can't take it back to the cockpit, and then have to rig a small line. You know, there's a small loop here, an end-to-end loop, which we do have as an emergency furling line. We would put a block down here, and then in that case, we would just by hand try to roll down the sail. We haven't tried that yet. I don't want to try that because it's going to be a monumental effort to do it well enough to furl up this big, heavy mainsail. Furthermore, we'd have to tie a truckless hitch in it to keep it from unraveling during a reef. So if we have this thing single or double reefed, and back in the cockpit there we have one line through a rope clutch, and that line is grabbing about half of that gear wheel inside here, and that's enough to prevent the mainsail from rolling out of its reef, shaking out a reef. And that's not exactly the sturdiest method. I mean, that gear wheel is pretty sharp, and you can see the line here is getting chafed, frayed by working the action across the gear wheel. So that's a lot of effort on that line, especially when it's only holding half of it. The question is then, why don't you just pull on both legs? Well, one, there's only one rope clutch in the cockpit for these two legs coming back. And two, as the boom swings left and right, this here, which is coming off of a couple of blocks down there, is working, right? So this line is always working as the boom is swinging, because one leg is getting shorter, one leg is getting longer, and therefore the legs change lengths as the boom swings around, and then it's working on the drum there. So the cracks on these booms, the two that I've seen, occur right here along this butt edge where you think the two pieces would come together. Now going back to that slamming into the rigging, well, imagine the force here, right? So you got 300, 400 pounds of force here with all that inertia swinging wildly into the rod rigging here and hitting at a point that's just 2.5 feet back from the gooseneck. Well, what do you think is going to happen? The force is going to be transferred to the gooseneck here. This is going to take all that punishment, especially on the opposite side. Of course, the benefit of having an end-boom furling system is so that it's a no-brainer. You can unfurl and furl as you wish from the cockpit without having to do anything. Trouble is, that's not the case for us. I have to come up here every single time and stand on that on the drape guard there and peer into the sail or into the boom to make sure that it's furling correctly. As you can see here, I have a very, very narrow gap, and even then it's touching right there. So sometimes we have to stop the show, haul the sail back up, and readjust the topping lift, because the topping lift is an imperfect tool or measuring device to set the boom height. Yeah, Yeah, so my impression of the Furlerboom, if you care to take a guess, is less than favorable.